Okay, so yeah, so my path to gaining work authorization in the United States involved many steps. It's not like the easiest process, as you all are probably already aware. But I think the first thing I did was to take full advantage of OPT, optional practical training, and CPT, curricular practical training. My first employer, I convinced them that it would be super easy for them to give me an extended test run using OPT. And so I did that for a few months before I decided to come back to MSU and do a master's degree. So, you know, it was a smaller company. They had sponsored employees for, you know, work visas before, but they weren't super familiar with like what OPT was. And so me selling them on the fact that that was just an easy process to take care of, and that I would handle the majority of it and they didn't even have to do anything or spend money, got them comfortable with that process. And then that gave me really the chance to impress them, right? Like it gave me a long trial run with them. Then I went back and did my master's, and actually I was able to work part-time for that same company using CPT because the job was obviously in my field of study. So, and then I finished my master's, and since that was a new degree, I was able to do OPT again. So I was able to work for that company for almost 2.5 years without them having to worry about work authorization, right? So 2.5 years later, I had already been actually promoted within my job. They wanted to keep me. They didn't want to start training somebody new. They didn't want to replace somebody that had over 2 years experience working for them for somebody else. So they did everything they needed to do to keep me, which was in that case, you know, offered to sponsor me for an H-1B visa. And so I really took full advantage of CPT and OPT. That really helped me navigate that process early on. So by that point, I had proven myself. They wanted to keep me. And so the question of whether they were or weren't going to sponsor me for an H-1B visa wasn't even a question. It was more, how are we going to handle this? Now, I will say, because I had a master's degree, I was under the H-1B advanced degree cap, which is separate from the undergraduate pool. So I did have that advantage. I'm not going to, underplay that. That definitely helps. If you do have an advanced degree, it is easier, because with undergraduate caps usually get full. I've tried to hire H-1Bs that got into a lottery process. Some of them successful, some of them unsuccessful. And so, there is that to keep in mind. So I did have a master's degree by the time I went into the H-1B process, which helped me. But that's not to say that you shouldn't pursue that if you only have an undergraduate degree, but do try to take advantage of that OPT and CPT if you can. 3 years later, I was doing well in my company. I'd been promoted a couple of times, and so the renewal process for H-1B was not all that difficult for me, because by that point I had been with the company for 5 years, and so it was just kind of the next step. We had started talking about them sponsoring me for a green card. That process does take a long time and significant documentation, way beyond what you'd require for an H-1B even. But at the same time, over the previous couple of years, I had been in a relationship with a U.S. citizen, and we ended up getting married before my H-1B period expired. So I did get a green card through marriage to a U.S. citizen. So that, may or may not apply to you guys, to anybody watching this video. But I guess my advice is more around the way I navigated through my work, all of that, because my company was talking about sponsoring me for a green card. I had been there for a long time. I was good at what I was doing. I transitioned from OPT to CPT to OPT to H-1B. And so if you do all of those things, they're much more likely to want to keep you long term. Now, I have been married for just over 4 years, just under 4 years. And I just became a U.S. citizen this past December of 2019. So that's kind of the way I navigated that whole process. So I'm now a U.S. citizen. I voted in the most recent elections. So that was the way I navigated the process. So I guess if I would go back to like what advice I would say is, take full advantage of CPT, OPT if you can, and educate the people recruiting you, because they might not know about it. and that might help you get a long ways, a long ways before the topic of sponsorship even has to come up.